BeastNet Podcast, sponsored in part by James Safety Services, OCR Buddy, and supported by the fitness community. Here we discuss all things fitness related, running, rucking, mental health and preparedness, and of course, obstacle course racing. Welcome to the BeastNet.
We don't bite hard.
Hey everybody, welcome to BeastNet, and today I have with me Jen. Jen, let everyone know a little bit about who Jen is.
Yep, absolutely. So nice to be on the podcast. Thank you for having me. I had been talking a little bit to Boggs about doing a podcast for some time. I am initially trained in psychology. I have my doctorate of psychology, and I do a lot of work with trauma and addiction. And I've since shifted in the past, probably 3 to 5 years, really since COVID, actually. I made a big shift in doing body work to work with trauma and addiction. So I finished up certification as a personal trainer, yoga instructor, done a lot of work in Ayurveda. So really taking a body first approach to this work instead of a top-down approach. For my own self, healing my own trauma and challenges I've had in life really took place once I started obstacle course racing and Spartans. And I just found that being in my body, doing physical stuff with other people, connecting to other people in a safe way was a way that not just for myself, but I was seeing a lot of people heal from the challenges that they've experienced. And so I started racing on my own. I was almost 220 pounds at 5'2" and 40 years old. And I've lost a lot of weight, got into shape, healed inside and out. And starting in 2021, I started racing with teams with adaptive athletes. So I race with Oscar Mike, More Heart Than Scars, OEW, and then some friends of mine that are also adaptive athletes. And Boggs saw that I had done a podcast on healing trauma in a body first way. And he kind of reached out to me and was like, hey, this is awesome. And I was like, hey, I'd love to be on BeastNet sometime. And it just kind of turned out. And he said, you need to do a podcast anyway, because you're doing the death race in June. And I said, well, we'll just kind of have two birds with one stone here and hang out for a while and talk.
And just to clarify, she's doing the death race. I've thought about it, and someday in my life I want to, but I think I was in good enough shape in 2020. But then after kind of letting myself, and it's you nailed it on the head. It is kind of, I think it's amazing to have the psychology portion and the physical portion.
Yeah.
Because in all reality, one of the things I've learned, and I'm still learning, you really can't have one without the other.
Absolutely.
Because they go together so much. I mean, if you work on yourself mentally and you get yourself, into a good place, but you're not physically, then that physical unwellness is going to creep into your mental. And that's the hardest part. Like for me, it's, it's one of those vicious cycles that I've had where I do really well. Like I did it during COVID. I lost a bunch of the weight, and then I had a minor injury. It was a little bit more than minor, but I had an injury, and then I let that physical side of it take over.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, instead of the 180 pounds I was during COVID, and I was 310 before, now I'm up to 245, and I'm like, okay, now I'm creeping back up there. I'm not back to where I was,
Right.
but I'm still not in a great place.
Right. And that's that balance, right? So a lot of my approach is mind, body, heart, and soul. So we have to know who we are, like at our core. That's that soul piece that may be integrated with some sort of spirituality or something, but it's really like, who are you as a human being, right? In your gut. And then the heart piece is that connection to ourselves and other people. Like we can't live in this world alone. And they, so many people talk about like having connection, having camaraderie, right? Having our race family, right? These chosen people that we connect with. That is such a huge part of it too. And that helps with all the others, and having that balance with the mental, the physical, our connections, and like, figuring out who the heck we are, right? I'm, pushing 50 and I still don't know who I am. Like, it's a constant work in progress to balance all of these things. And really the OCR community has all four of them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have that mindset, right? You have to be in the present moment, because if you're thinking about something else, you're going to mess up. You're going to
Yes.
trip and fall. You're going to fall off an obstacle, right?
Which
You
is
have
not
to
good.
have that physical piece, and the connection with others, and be in it for the right reason. So
Yes. And I think that's one of the hard parts on that too, is, I mean, a lot of times, like I just mentioned, I just did um the ultra with Marla and More
yeah.
Heart Than Scars.
Mm-hmm.
Um, by the end of it, I wasn't actually even with the team.
Mm-hmm.
I had dropped way back. But part of the reason I dropped way back, one of them was I was having issues, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, so was one of our teammates.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it was kind of one of those things, that anyone who's been in Spartan for years and has done any of the like hurricane heats and all that, they have the warrior ethos,
Mm-hmm.
always place the mission first.
Right.
I did. I looked at it. Marla and the team, they had it. They were
Yep.
good with who they had. They were okay if I was going to drop back.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go.
Yep.
And then one of the other ones is never leave a fallen comrade. Well,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
comrade was falling behind. I dropped back with him and
Mm-hmm.
helped him. And we didn't even really talk. And I think that's what a lot of people think. I mean, we didn't talk. In fact, most of the time I was ahead of him, but I was just far enough that at each turn I could turn around and see him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd start walking again. So
Yeah.
he would know I was there, but I knew
Mhm.
where he was too.
Right.
So, because it's kind of one of those things, and it sounds bad to say this, but a lot of times psychologically, we don't want to talk about the fact that we're having problems.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
But to know
Absolutely.
that one of my teammates is right there if I really
Mhm.
need them, because I've been
Right.
there. I've been that person that was failing and having issues. And
Mm-hmm.
just knowing they're right there, it's like, okay, I'm not alone. There's somebody
Right.
with me,
Mm-hmm. Yep,
you know?
100%. And that's that right felt sense of
Hmm.
safety and connection that goes without words. And
Yeah.
we see that on the course all the time, right? It's just like a glance, like, right, like racing with more heart than scars, right? Like, Joey, Danita, like when we're out there as a team, you just look and like
Yep.
people just know and fall in sync. It's like this nonverbal process that just happens through connection, and it doesn't have to be spelled out or talked about. And that's where, so much can occur for ourselves without even talking, just by feeling like, hey, this person's got my back. Like they're going to make sure I'm okay. And it doesn't need to be said or talked about.
No, exactly. And that was kind of it. I just wanted to make sure that he knew I was there. And then one of the other guys actually started having issues at one point too and dropped back and ended up with us, you
Yep.
know. But we finished. But then what was amazing about it too is we were maybe about we were only like 5 or 10 minutes behind the group. We weren't
Yep.
way behind, but we were about 5 or 10 minutes behind. Martha came back and walked around the fire to jump over the fire with us.
That's
So we
amazing.
could still
Mhm.
have that amazing feeling with her. Bear was there waiting and handed us, which normally anyone who's done an ultra knows at the end of the ultra, you have to go to the results tent to get your
Right.
your buckle.
Mm-hmm.
No, Bear was standing there with him in his hands and
That's
handed him,
awesome.
put him over our neck as we came across. So we
Yeah.
still got that treatment as if we were with the team because we
Mhm.
started and we were with the team
Right.
even at the end. So,
Mhm.
which is amazing. And I mean, that's one of the things I've always loved about the OCR community. That's how
Mhm.
it is.
Right. Right.
We're all together. We know we're all struggling. It's like we always say with the, more heart than scars. There's the real scars that you can see.
Mm-hmm.
You can see people that are in wheelchairs, people that, amputees, stuff like that, those kind of adaptive athletes.
Mm-hmm.
But then most of the rest of us, we may not have obvious scars that you can see, but on the inside, most of
Right.
us have been through some stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're all there, working together, working on our own stuff in sync with someone else side by side. And, sometimes we talk about it a little. Sometimes you don't, like you said, you
Mhm.
don't have to. You just walk side by side with someone going through the course. And there's this feeling that this person gets what I've been through and they don't even know me. And that's okay. And we're just in it together.
And sometimes that's all you need. And I mean, I think that's one thing that, like in this world, which coming from me sounds horrible. Sometimes we don't need to talk. We just need to listen. And that's one of the biggest things that I found on course sometimes. Because everyone knows they've listened to this podcast enough. I can talk. It's kind of what I do.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I've learned over the years, and it took me a long time to really learn this. There's times where you just need to shut up.
Mhm.
Stop, let them talk, or not even talk at all. They don't even need to talk. Just let them know I'm here.
Yeah.
If you need to talk, I'm right here.
Mhm.
But then walk in silence, do whatever, run in silence. Just
Mhm.
let them know you're there. Because, like I said, most of us have been through so much. I
Mhm.
mean, I know some of the people's, you know, scars. Some of them I don't, and I don't need
Right.
to know. I just
Right.
need to know that, they just need to know I'm there if they need me. So,
Mhm.
you know, I've seen a lot. That's one thing. Boggs, you've met Boggs, obviously, and,
Yep.
been on here. We've been through a lot together. We
Yeah.
know each other's history. I mean,
Mhm.
me and Boggs met in preschool.
Yep.
So we've
I
known, so,
remember that in a podcast. I thought that was awesome when you
I
guys were on
mean,
together. Yeah.
we met and I've told people before when it comes to, like, I mean, I'm the youngest of 6 kids, but I
Mhm.
feel Dawn's more my sibling than pretty much any of them.
Mhm. Yeah.
I never had a real connection with my own brothers and sisters like I do with Boggs. So, I
Mhm.
mean, but when we're out there on course, we take care of each other. I've
Right.
seen him going through his worst.
Mhm.
I've also seen him go through his best. So,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of baggage that all of us carry out there on the course. And I think that's one of the things that's great about OCR is you have that baggage, and there's people out there that'll help you carry it.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that really drew me to OCR is, we're all there for different reasons, whether you're an elite athlete or you're racing with teams like we're talking about,
Hmm.
like that's, definitely my passion for this is working with teams and racing together. And every once in a while I do something crazy like a race for myself, but most of
Yeah.
the time I'm racing with the teams, and we all have baggage, and knowing that you're not in it alone and that there's someone there to help you carry these burdens, whatever they are. They're not going to judge you. They're just going to be there with you, for you, supporting you in whatever way. And it doesn't have to be talked about to
Yeah.
know. And that's, I think, one of the beauties of it is, we see people getting involved in OCR that just had these amazing experiences, and the end of the weekend is just so powerful, right? When people are finishing something together. A couple of years back, I did the ultra in Dallas with Georgie and Jeffrey and Gino, and we got Georgie through his first ultra, and we had DNF'd in Fayetteville, and it was sad, like, right, we were all kind of like a little disheartened, but we were like, no, we're going to get this done. And I had said I wasn't going to do an ultra unless it was with Georgie, and that's how I was going to get my buckle, and we did it. And the sun was setting, we knew we made the cutoff, and we just like stood there in the sunset, just like, man, like we did this, like we're there. And it was so powerful for all of us.
And it was funny. That's almost the exact opposite of what happened with Marla. Marla, we DNF Dallas
Mm-hmm.
and then finished it in Fayetteville.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and I mean, it was not time wise in Fayetteville. We weren't close to DNFing,
Mhm.
weather wise,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Because it was rainy, right?
it
Yeah.
started pouring rain, but there was thunder.
Yeah.
And I never saw lightning, but a couple people said they saw lightning. I never actually saw lightning, but we're looking at it at we're at like mile 26.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to pull us from this course and not give us our
Right.
buckles? I'm like, I think I will have a complete, utter meltdown at this point if that happens.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because for the safety factor, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that was just kind of one of those, I'm just like, oh man. So there was that hole right there at the end, like, please just let us get us through this.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't
Just
know what we
keep the
do.
lightning away.
Yeah. It's like people are like, if they come to take us, just go limp. They can't take us all.
Yep, exactly. You run this way, you go that way.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be able to clip our bands. Just go.
Yeah. Just go. We can do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's amazing stuff. Yeah.
it
And
is.
yeah,
No.
I was just gonna say, like, I think, talking about like more heart than scars in these teams where the mission, like back to that mission of
Mhm.
being in it together, right? Whatever's happening, we're in it together. Either, right? They can't take all of us. We're all going
Yep.
down together. We're all in it together. We're all finishing together. And that's something you really don't see anywhere else in life, right? I mean, you see it like in military, you see it in
Yep.
certain areas, but in most areas of life, it's very individualistic, right? Like people are out for themselves,
Mhm.
not working together. And that's the exact opposite of what we need to work through our stuff and to like carry our baggage.
It is, and I agree completely. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, some people know. I mean, if you've listened to episodes, in real life, I'm a safety guy. That's
Mhm.
what I do. I do
Yep.
safety. And in safety, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize. Safety is never a one man. You're
Right.
always your mind is on the whole team. How
Mhm.
do I make sure everybody goes home the way they're supposed to? Everyone goes home with the right fingers. Everyone goes home with the right amount of toes.
Mhm.
Nobody gets hurt. And then on the same side of that, you got to worry about mental too.
Mhm. Right. Right.
And that's one of the things, before I left Seattle there, I actually, amazingly got lucky enough I presented at the governor's conference on mental health and construction. Because of one of the companies I used to work for, Mandy Kime, who's with the AGC, is amazing. She
Mhm.
does, work with that. And since I worked with her, I actually got to present multiple
Mhm.
times on mental health awareness where she couldn't.
Mhm.
Um, and it was amazing to see the statistics
Yeah. Yeah.
and to understand, and I think that's one of the reasons why we see, like, in OCR, you see a lot of, like, you see some people that are like fitness trainers, stuff like that,
Mhm.
like on the elite side, but
Right.
then down, like, not sound bad, but down where I am
Mhm.
and where the rest of us are, you see a lot of ex-addicts,
Mhm. Yep.
military,
Mhm.
you know, people in the labor type fields and stuff like that.
Yep.
And those are the ones that a lot of the times have a lot of the physical, the mental, scars,
Right.
things that we put
Absolutely.
ourselves through.
Mhm.
And that's one thing we talk about when we talked about, especially because it was in construction, mental health and construction, the things that mental health, I mean, in construction, the beliefs that we all have, you're
Right.
supposed to
Mhm.
be tough. You
Yep.
can't say that, you're not supposed to say anything about your feelings. Leave it
Right.
at home, all
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. And then most of them, they self-medicate.
Mhm.
I'm not going to the
Absolutely.
doctor and tell them I have problems. I'm just going to have some whiskey when I get home. I'm
Right.
going to
I
have a,
can't ask for help,
yeah.
right? Because otherwise I'm going to be weak. And we learn all of these
Hmm.
things through society, right? And it's we know that if we talk about this stuff or at least feel like we're connected to other people with it, that it's healing, but we're taught not to listen to our bodies, right? Not
Hmm.
to share emotions. Even, very simply to say, like, I'm having a really crappy day, even if you don't want to dump out the whole bag of garbage, right? It's just to say I'm
Yeah.
having a crappy day. We're always like, no, we're good, right? I'm good. Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Suck it
And
up.
yeah, yeah. And that, sometimes, it's like, because it's a catch 22, right? So sometimes we need to have like an affirmation to be like, I can get through this. I got it. I could take a deep breath. I could keep going, right? It's not going to kill me. And then other times we need to say, hey, I'm not feeling so good. I'm feeling
Yeah.
like hurt myself. I don't
Hmm.
want to be here anymore. Especially with suicidal ideation, so many people don't share that they're
No.
having these thoughts, and it ends up taking so many lives when there's so many of us that would be there to listen and support. And
Yeah.
I love what so many different kind of pieces of community, I mean, especially More Heart Than Scars puts out suicide awareness. Joey's always putting out stuff about
Hmm.
suicide awareness, and here's numbers. There's always a person to lean into. And that even goes into the other Spartan community pages and stuff where people are like, hey, I'm here to listen. I had a friend of mine reach out to me. She was having some challenges, and just like out of the blue, she sent me a text. And she's not part of any of the teams. I met her through Spartan. She races individually. And we had like, a 5-6 minute chat. And half of it was just like, ugh, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
ugh, like, right. Not even any like coherent sentence. And that's all that was needed, right? And it was like, I get where you're coming from. Like, you don't even have to say anything more. And, I think that's a piece that is so powerful, that there are people here that really do care
Hmm.
in the community and want to connect. And if they don't have the resources, right, or understanding of it, they know people that do, right? So they
Yeah.
want to give that support.
Which is amazing. And I mean, there are so many resources out there and so many like different things talking about, things to look for and stuff like that. I think one of my favorite videos, I mean, it's sad as can be, but it's one, and I think it's from England, but it
Mhm.
shows two guys at a soccer match, and you
Yep.
see one guy that just looks like the grumpy old curmudgeon the whole time,
Mhm.
and the one guy that's just happy and cheering on the whole time. And then all of a sudden, they're always every game, they come
Mhm.
together, they sit there, and the one guy just looks cranky, and the other guy's all excited. And then all of a sudden, on the last game, it's the cranky guy shows up, and the other guy's not there, and he
Yeah.
just puts like his jersey over, and he's all, and you're like, it's not always the cranky one.
Right.
And people
100%.
miss that.
Mhm.
They're like, oh, he was always, and you hear it all the time. He was always so happy, and it was always this. And for me,
Right.
that always hits home. When I was in high school, one of a good friend of mine died from suicide,
Yeah.
And he was the happiest guy. He literally came to our house, hung out with us. We goofed off. We were playing around in the yard, doing whatever. He had already left a note in his
Mm.
bedroom.
Wow. Yeah.
And then he left, and we were like the last ones to see him. And it was just like none of us had any
Right.
clue,
Mm-hmm.
had
Right.
any clue, like the happiest person you'd ever known. But on the
Mm-hmm.
inside, he was just destroyed. There
Right.
was so many things going on that we all found out afterwards of like, in his personal life that was all going bad, but
Yeah.
he just felt like he couldn't tell any of us because it
Right.
would have made him less of a man. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, what
Yeah.
makes you less of a man is you're not here anymore.
Right, right, 100%. And we get so good at wearing these masks, right?
Hmm.
Of this is what I'm supposed to be like, right? This is my role. This is what people expect out of me. They expect me to laugh. They expect me to be happy,
Hmm.
right? And we're told, like not to cry or, turn it around like in a way that isn't helpful. Just like, kind of like you said, suck it up, right? Shift it around. Like nobody wants to
Just
hear
smile.
that. Yeah, smile, just smile. And that creates this mask that, okay, I have to be this way. Nobody wants a Debbie Downer, quote
Hmm.
unquote, or, all of these sayings. And in reality, like what you said last, like, hits the nail on the head. Like, you're none of that if you're not here.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're not here, none of that matters. So being here and being sad, we want you here and sad, and we can work through the sadness together. Right. We can, find ways through it. And, rather than finding different ways, whether it's
Hmm.
substances or suicide to kind of try to shift things, finding ways to lean into other people and find those connections.
Yeah, and you know that it's the masks. I mean, I've gone through, and I mean, most people that know me well enough probably listen to podcasts. I've had my dark moments.
Mhm.
I've gone through some very, very dark times, and that was one of the biggest things. Is I've even said it, and I've told people that I've talked to my wife about this and told other people. I felt like I always had a mask.
Yeah.
Whenever, no matter what happened, I always had to throw on the mask, and nobody'd ever. I felt like for years, and I still feel like this sometimes, where nobody's ever actually known the real me because
Mm-hmm.
it's somewhere under these masks and these
Yeah.
walls that I've thrown up over
Mm-hmm.
years to
Right.
protect myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But,
Absolutely.
and it's hard to get past that. And sometimes that's where the darkness and, when you
Mm-hmm.
go into those dark places, people don't realize it because you've got so many masks and walls up. It looks like everything is hunky dory. The world's great, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that I'm dancing and singing in the rain. When in
Yep.
all reality, it's
Mm-hmm.
just darkness.
Yeah.
And it's scary to think of that. And that's one thing, like you said, the teams, all that kind of stuff. I always know there's someone there.
Mm-hmm.
If I
Yep.
need it, they're a phone call away. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Zach right now with the couch,
Yeah. Which is
you know.
amazing. Love this couch. Like, I
Uh,
think it's so
yeah.
powerful. Mm-hmm.
At some point, I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to have to carry that thing, but I just
Mm-hmm.
don't know when yet. But
I
which it
know.
is. It's
Yep.
hugely powerful. And then we
Mm-hmm.
come to the part like you were talking about, like now all of a sudden throwing the physical side into it.
Yeah.
We got the mental side. We all know about the mental side, but sometimes, like you said, the physical takes a whole new,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're an athlete that's been doing really well, and then
Yeah.
suddenly you can't. Like I
Right.
said, I hit a dark spot
Mm-hmm.
um about a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
When I crashed on the Ironman and I had problems with my knee and my shoulder.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, they were a lot worse than I let people know. I
Mm-hmm.
really kind of hid how bad I actually hurt myself on that race. Um, but I hit a dark spot because I dropped to 180 pounds. I was doing great, but leading up to it, and my trainer knows this and a few other people, I was already injured before
Mm-hmm.
the race. I had already injured myself.
Wow.
My left calf was damaged, and I had some other issues already going into the race because I'd been training so hard because I'd
Yep.
finally hit there and I needed to keep it
Right.
because
Mm-hmm.
that's how I identified now. I was that athlete, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what that was my identification.
Yeah.
And I was pushed too hard. So I
Mm-hmm.
was already susceptible. If I hadn't crashed, I probably would have got injured anyway, because
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I was already battling an injury.
Right.
Um, and then once I crashed and all of a sudden I can't do anything and the weight scanning and everything's coming back. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, once again, who am I?
Right.
I'm not the athlete anymore. I've lost that. I'd
Mhm.
finally hit that. Now I don't have it anymore.
Yep.
Who am I now? And
Mm-hmm.
then it starts that vicious cycle. Like I said, all of a sudden now I'm gaining the weight back. So I'm
Yeah.
getting more depressed. And then the
Right.
depression's making me gain more weight. And then I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
more depressed. And you get
Mm-hmm.
into under that vicious cycle and, trying to break yourself out of it.
Right. Absolutely. And then we isolate, right? Because
Mhm.
we're not doing the things, we're not going to the gym, we're not meeting our trainer, we're not, kind of out there. I had a spinal cord injury in 2019 and I couldn't do anything for 3 months. Like I couldn't even physically go to the bathroom, shower, like all of that stuff without help. And it's kind of that soul piece came in of like, well, who am I now? Right. I can't work. Right. I'm sitting on a couch. Someone's taking care of me. What am I going to do with myself? And I had to fight a lot, like you're saying, right. A lot of those kind of shadows and
Mhm.
darkness and those, thoughts about all sorts of things started creeping in. And when you're laying there in bed, right, alone, and you're not connecting to the people that you normally would see that, would kind of like shift you out of it a little bit, it's very easy to get trapped in those dark spots. And
It
it's
is.
hard to remember you can't have shadows without light, right?
No.
It's very easy to just get stuck in the shadows and not see any of that hope or that brightness. And reaching out to some of the people in the OCR community that I was friends with, like they started saying like, okay, Jen's getting quiet. What's going on? Right. And
Yeah.
they'd send me notes. And that's been one of the most amazing things when I forget who I am besides all this other stuff, is I have friends now that will kind of say like, hey, just checking in, you're kind of quiet, or what's going on. And I never had that before OCR. I did that for so many other people, but never had that for me, like people who
Yeah.
actually would kind of reach out to me and just be like, what's going on? Like, you're not so active, like, in social media, or we haven't heard from you. And it's amazing.
It is. I have a few people that'll do that for me. That will reach out to me and just be like, "Hey, how's it going?" I had people that I did it for a lot.
Yeah.
Like people that when I knew somebody was in a dark place, I'd just be like, "Hey, bud, how you doing?
Hmm.
Thinking about you."
Yeah.
And that was it. It wasn't anything big. It was just like, "Hey, what's up?" You
Hmm.
know. I think for me too, the hard part is after the injury, it wasn't too much longer later until I moved to Houston.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, it was like I'd
Shift.
already been isolating, except for a few races here and there.
Mhm.
Like last year, I think I did 3 races all year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I only did 3 Spartans, and it was, I guess, 5 races. I did 3 Spartans, I did Sisu, and then I did Ragnar and a couple small triathlons.
Yeah.
But that was it. But I'd already started isolating. Then all of a sudden, I moved to Houston, and that was a tough one for me. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of people, of course, once again, the masks come on, everything else. It was tough because now all of a sudden, not only am I just isolating, like in my place. Now I'm 3,000 miles away from
Yeah.
my entire
Yep.
support system.
Hmm.
I have one really good friend here who I met doing the Dallas Ultra 2 years ago that lives here, and we do stuff together. So I have her, and then I've met a few people since I've been down here, but that was
Hmm.
really tough.
Yeah.
Um, but I think honestly, what's kind of snapped me out of it a little bit is I did the Ironman
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
that's what I'd failed twice trying to do
Hmm.
half Ironman. And finally, when I finished it, and it bugs me because I was 20 minutes later than I should have been, but
Hmm.
whatever, they still gave me the finish. Um, but I finished it. So
Hmm.
I think that's kind of helped snap me. And it sounds weird, but it's that whole like, okay, I finally beat it.
Hmm.
Now what can I do next?
Right.
Now it's time to start getting back out of the shadows,
Hmm.
come back into the light and try and get back to where I should be. Should I
Hmm.
be the 180? No, but I need to drop at least about 20, 25
Hmm.
pounds, get back into the shape I should be,
Yep.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think
Where you could be, that's kind of
yeah.
shifted a little. Yeah.
And that's kind of one of those things I think is like it's hard sometimes, and sometimes it comes back to that physical again. Once you kind of step out of that and you finally beat something that you've
Hmm.
been trying to for a while, it snaps you out of it mentally as well as
Hmm.
physically. And then once you start going back into a vicious cycle, but this time in a good way,
Right.
now
Hmm.
the good feelings are coming back, which
Yep.
makes you work out, which gives you
Hmm.
more good feelings. But it's really easy to snap out of that because of an injury, because like we said, I've had 3 times now where I've started dropping weight, doing really well, and then had a major injury.
Yeah. Yeah. And that
One was
changes our mindset,
yep,
right? Because like you said, we start to get depressed. We start to
yeah,
see the shoulda, coulda, woulda,
hmm,
what ifs, and then we get stuck in that kind of negative snowball versus this piece. Wow, I did it. Now I have a positive mindset. I know I can do it. I can set my mind to it and kind of shift in the other way.
And now start going the other way. Because the one thing a lot of people are like 2012, I did it because of the mindset that we've always had of the mental, like we have to just keep going. I blew my knee at mile 6 on a half marathon.
Wow.
I finished the half marathon.
Yeah. Yeah. Pushing through in a way that might not be the healthiest, right?
I pushed through. And when I went, of course, went to the doctor a couple of days later, like my knee's hurting bad. And she's like, well, from looking at the, MRIs, everything else, you probably would have been okay if you stopped at 6 miles, when it first happened. But the fact that you pushed for another 7 miles,
right.
like you're going to need physical therapy. You're going to need all of this. And so all that work I had done is suddenly gone because I pushed through an injury. And that's, I think, the hardest part too, is to get through that mindset of sometimes we do have to fail,
right,
so that we can succeed later. And that was my biggest thing, is I wanted, and it was all because I would get a special medal, because I did the Portland Rock and Roll and then did Seattle Rock and Roll 2 weeks later. It was
so
during the
that
Seattle
double,
and I got that double medal, and the special Pacific Northwest medal. But it was during that second race, because I'd injured it slightly in Portland. And then going down one of the downhills, my knee just gave up. And by the time I finished the race, like every other step, my knee was trying to give out. And it was just like, but I was like, I did it. But then once I got in the car, I had to have my wife help me get out of the car. So I get up the stairs into the house because my knee wouldn't work at all.
Yeah. Wow. That's
And
intense.
It's just like,
Well, and that's that, like, one of the things that I think we so often need to do is we need to like detoxify like these mindsets of like, push through it. Like I remember being a kid in sports in the 80s, and it was kind of like spit on it, wipe it off, get back on the court.
Rub some dirt in it.
Yeah, it was like, just go, and but that's like kind of a toxic way of thinking. Like our bodies aren't going to be, I want to be doing this stuff well into my 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever level I can, right? I don't want to be completely broken in my 50s that I can't, right? And we need that recovery time. We need to change the thought pattern of, oh my gosh, I'm a failure if I, DNF this race. Well, no, you're taking care of your body. You're listening to your body, which makes you even stronger than in so many ways, because you're strong in mind, strong in heart, strong in soul, because you're doing what you need to do to help the physical piece. And, I spent years thinking, push, the more bruises, right? Like I play volleyball, bloody lip, keep playing, and like,
no pain, no gain.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I've playing baseball. I can remember playing like with, bloody lips, bleeding. You're out there basically look like you have a chew in your mouth, but it's like a paper towel or a napkin to try and stop the bleeding, but you're still out there playing. And doing all sorts of stuff like that. Because when I originally, I've blown both knees, but when I originally blew my left knee was in junior high. I stepped in a gopher hole while I was chasing a baseball. And going to catch in the outfield, and my coach said I tried standing up 3 times with like everyone, it's like stay down, but the ball was right there. And in my brain, I'm like, no, I've got to get the ball. I've got to, no matter how much it hurts, this is what I'm supposed to do. And it's like, no, step back, lay down. You're going to do more damage trying to continue on. And in your quest to finish that one race, now suddenly you're going to miss how many, and you're going to lose out on all that training. And now you're going to have to start from zero. And that's what I did. I pushed myself. I finished that race, but then I couldn't do another one for, I think it was almost 9 months.
Wow. Yeah. That's the whole season, pretty much the rest of the season. Yeah.
So by the time I was able to start racing again, it was 9 months later. And of course, you don't think about the fact that you're not training the same way, but you keep eating the same way. And now all of a sudden I was down to 215. Now I'm 270 again. And then it's like, now it's even harder to go. And that was the biggest thing, and then I, once again, a couple years later, tried starting it again. And in 2016, and then all of a sudden, because I started Spartan in 15, I, have a ladder come down on my foot and break all 5 metatarsals straight across my foot.
Oh my
My
gosh.
toes touched my heel.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You
Yeah.
know, it's a good one
Painful.
when the nurse looks at the X-ray and then starts calling the other nurses over, going, "Come here, you got to look at this one."
Yeah, right.
No.
And not what you want, right? Like you said, then your physical
Yeah.
setback and then the mental takes over
Yes.
and the
And that's
isolation.
exactly what happened to me. It was the
Yeah,
physical. All of a sudden, I'm injured. I can't do anything, you
right.
know. But I still kept doing the Spartan races, but I wasn't doing anything in between because it hurt so much afterwards,
Yeah.
you know. And then all of a sudden, I'm 310 pounds, still
Hmm.
trying to do these things, but then using the excuse, well, my foot, my foot, my foot. And it's like, okay, it's been 5 years,
Hmm.
you know. Well,
Yeah.
that I think it was 4 or 5 years, whatever that time. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you need to give up on the excuse and just start doing this. And
Right.
that's what, it was COVID year when all of a sudden I dropped from, 310 to 180.
Yep. Yep.
It hurt. I will be
Right.
honest, it hurt for the first couple months trying to get all that scar tissue and everything out of that left foot.
Right. And get it. Yeah. Working in and
But eventually it came back. I mean, they told me I'd never have push with that foot. I still
hmm.
don't run the same way I used to. It's
Right.
completely different. But,
Mhm.
and I think that's why I'm like right now I'm having issues with my left leg is because of that foot still.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
it's relearning how to do everything.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's the piece that like knowing where our body is at and knowing that it's okay, right? For whatever
Mm,
place our body is at and how we can adapt and overcome, right?
yeah,
And shift things, right? This is the way my
exactly.
body runs now, right? This is the way my body climbs now. This,
Hmm.
I've lost a lot of flexibility in my back with my injury and I can't do certain things like I used to, but I could do them in other ways,
Yeah.
right? And so it's
You just find
that
ways to adapt.
exactly.
It's like
And that,
Spartan teaches us
yeah.
obstacle in your way, adapt and overcome.
Exactly, right? You go over it, you go under it, you burpee around it, like whatever you're doing, right? And
Whatever you
you
got to
get
do.
through it. Yep. And I
Whatever you got
think
to do, but give up. Don't do that.
exactly. And I think that's one of the things that, I know, like I always say, like, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the strongest, but I have a big heart, right? I can push through, like I can have a lot of time on my feet and stuff, right? And it's that piece of like, this is your race, right? So you're
Hmm.
not competing when you're running open, like you're not competing with anyone else. Like, and our
Yeah.
mission racing with these teams are to get the team through, right? No
Yes.
one's left behind. We're all going to get together in whatever way that looks like, even if the team has to kind of split into a group of two or something, because
Hmm.
there's different needs with different athletes. We're still all in it together, right? So it's like having that mission and knowing like this is what I'm capable of. Here's my strengths, here's the areas I need support on, here's
Hmm.
where I can help certain people, right? And here's where I need someone to give me a boost or help me. And that's that, in reality, how we're helping each other with the physical aspects of the race. And then that's where it comes to that emotional piece of helping with like the psychological burdens or the, kind of the darkness and the shadows that are kind of spinning around within ourselves are carried in that way too.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, that's where it becomes that, that dual dichotomy of trying to keep them both,
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
mix the mental and the physical,
Mm-hmm.
because we forget, like, like I kind of you explained a little bit, they're so connected.
Yeah.
Where
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, like
Exactly.
I said, that was the biggest thing where I hit my darkest places was when I physically couldn't do what I wanted to do, whether it be because of an injury or just because I let myself get too big,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and I had, problems. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, and a lot of times I always had an excuse. Oh, I had this injury. And then you're like, yeah, but that was 5 years ago, man. Come on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
And that's kind of the,
mindset shifts in and starts giving us those excuses, and we start
Mhm,
making excuses, and then we believe them, right?
mhm,
Oh, I'll never, I was told I might not be able to walk, and then it was like, okay, if you're gonna walk, you're never gonna be able to do those Spartans again, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna do them again
yeah,
somehow, right? Some way, shape, or form, and it's like you can kind of get stuck in that belief, and there was multiple times where I was like, do I even want to go on, right,
yeah,
with this stuff going on, depending, different times in my life. And it's hard because a lot of us don't like saying that, right? We don't feel comfortable saying that, but it's happened, and it's okay because there's people there that support you and love you and will help you get through it. And it's important that we talk about this stuff because there's, I've met more people in the OCR community that have battled some tough stuff than I ever thought. Like when I first started, I was like, these people are amazing athletes. They got their stuff together. They're balanced. And in reality, they're right. Just like all of us,
Yeah.
right? We're dealing with stuff, right? And we're working together and, trying to leave it on the mountain or work through it or connect with people. And I think it's an important piece for people to know, like talking about the mental health pieces and that connection of, it's like a seesaw. You got to have it balanced because if one dips, the other's going to kind of fall off the ledge
Yeah.
too.
Oh yeah, no, completely. I mean, it is one of those things I've learned very much on this podcast was like I had that, and I made that, judgment of people of all time when I see these just amazing athletes and I'm like, geez, man, I wish I was born with those genes. And then you realize
Right.
like, no, they've worked their ass off,
Right.
literally,
Yeah.
to
Yep.
get to where they are. And
Mhm.
it's like, some people are born, just whatever but even when they are, they still have to work to keep it.
Right. Absolutely.
I think one of the best ones is, I mean, you see it in the, I've been really into football the last couple of years. You see a lot of football players. We see those people that just have that natural talent
Right.
and they're drafted really high. And then all of a sudden they just wash out of the league in like a year or two. And you're like, how?
Yeah.
Because they didn't work. They were
Right.
born with it, but they didn't
Mhm.
work to keep it. And
Yep.
that's one of the things that, no matter how great an athlete is, they're still working their ass off to try and
Absolutely.
keep that. And
Mhm.
that's one thing that, a lot of us forget. They just think, oh, we hear it all the time. And all of a sudden, when I lost all the weight, and they're like, oh, it must be nice to be. I'm like,
Mhm.
I worked hard. I mean, it
Yeah.
was, I was running 100 miles a month, at least 100
Yeah.
miles a month.
Mhm.
Um, and plus doing other things, doing workouts with friends, doing all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Mhm.
And I mean, it was a lot of work. And that's where I need to get to again. I mean, because it's like I said, you get that mental, like, oh, I'm injured. I can't do anything.
Right.
And I
Mhm.
know about it and I still do it.
Mhm.
I let myself fall back into the trap even this last time, after doing it with my foot.
Mhm.
They kept telling me, you'll never be able to push with that foot. You'll never be able to runner. You'll never
Right.
be a runner again.
Mhm.
I did a marathon after the injury in 4 hours and 39 minutes.
Yep. Wow. Yeah.
Is that
Mhm.
really fast? No, but for me, that's fast, especially when they tell you you're never going to run again.
Exactly. Exactly.
Doctors do know what they're talking, but they're not always like when they say you can't do something, they're
Mhm.
not always correct. I mean, you
Right.
need to test yourself. And sometimes, hey, you may not be, you may be you be able to run a marathon in 3 hours. You have an injury. You may never hit that 3 hours again, but you might be
That
able to
doesn't
hit
mean
four and a
you can't
half.
do it. Mhm. And we've seen, I mean, like, I'm sure you've seen with, with, especially with more heart than scars. Like, I mean, I've seen amazing
Hmm.
things happen with people who were told you will never walk again, right? You will be in this wheelchair and they're doing amazing
Yes.
things through, right? Getting that mindset to say, wait a second, if I could do this, maybe I could do a little bit more. I could do this with support. Maybe I could do this piece on my own or with a different type of support. And, bodies are amazing to heal.
Yes.
And the mental piece too, right? That when we feel really good, we have our own dopamine spikes. We have serotonin spikes. Like being in the mud and dirt increases serotonin, which is what we need to battle depression. So it's like we know these things. So it's not just even feeling good and changing our emotions. Like it really is changing our physiological and our neuropsychological state. Like it's changing our brain, which people don't think about that like extent too. And when I started doing this stuff, I said, wait a second, I'm feeling way better in a different way, not just telling myself, but actually sleeping better, right? Eating better, like feeling good, waking up in a good mood, having better
Hmm.
dreams, like all of this stuff starts happening, which is amazing. And I think that we need to think about that stuff too. Like it really does change our entire life in all these ways when we're engaging with our body and our mind and connecting with other people.
Oh yeah, it does hugely. And I mean, it's like you said, people can do some amazing things. It's like, just doing the ultra with Marla. A lot of people see like her in the wheelchair. Yes, for part of it, she is in the wheelchair because we're helping her while making sure she can get through it.
Mm-hmm.
But she walked a
Yeah.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
And she was walking a lot of that. In
Yeah.
fact, she actually got us, which I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I'm gonna. Um, we lost her at one point.
Wow.
Like literally, all of a sudden
Going.
we stopped at the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
We all thought she went to the bathroom while we grabbed some water and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Well, she got out of the wheelchair and started walking.
Yep. Hmm.
And all of a sudden we're sitting there and we're like, she's still in the bathroom? And but they're all green and we're like, hmm. So one of the guys goes over and like, Marla, like
Yep.
knocks on the doors, nothing, opens them all. They're like, she's gone.
Yeah. I'm not waiting for you guys in the bathroom. I got an ulcer to finish.
And that
Yep.
was it. She was like,
Hmm.
gotta go. She was,
Hmm.
I think, what, probably half a mile ahead of
Yep.
us. Had just taken
Wow.
off.
Yeah. Yeah. She
You
felt
know,
good. She was in her body and
she
in
was.
the present moment and was like, I can do this. I can walk.
Yeah.
Yep.
She was in the
Which is
moment. She just
amazing.
went,
Mhm. Yep.
which is amazing to see. I mean, and to see some of the things these people can do. I mean, because like I've done it with Marla, and they've been told all their lives, you can't do this. You can't do any
Right.
of this stuff anymore because of this, and that.
Hmm. Right.
I did one with Erica in Florida and
Yeah.
watch her, go through and over obstacles and stuff like
Mhm.
that. I mean, in her condition, and I'm just like,
Yeah. She's a beast.
she's
She
insane.
is a
She's
beast.
she's
Yeah.
so good, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and I've always told everyone that the biggest one for me, the first time was Casey McAllister. I don't know if you've ever met Casey.
Mm.
He's over in the West Coast mainly.
Okay. Yeah.
And the
No,
first
I
time I saw
haven't.
him was at a Seattle race, and he's nothing from the waist down,
Yep.
like gone, you know. Um, and I'm on a race by going out there, I'm wrecked. It was a
Hmm.
beast, I think, and I'm just destroyed. And I come around a corner, and there's Casey, nothing from the waist down, just
Hmm.
trudging along, and I'm looking at him
Yeah.
going, oh, I guess I have no excuse,
Hmm. Yep.
and it's like,
Absolutely.
and that's the thing. It's like, Morehart says, no excuses. I
Hmm.
mean, if you
Right.
have something, we'll help you get through it,
Right. Hmm.
you
Yep.
know?
And whatever, kind of whatever speed, whatever needs, all of
Yep.
that is kind of work together. And it's, trying to do the best, and our best changes, right? Some
Hmm.
days we're in a really good headspace, right? Our, mindset is nice and clear, and our best might be, 100%. And other days, the best we can do might be 70. And that's okay, as long as we're being honest and talking
Hmm.
about this is what I need. And I think that that's, the beauty of these groups and OCR is being able to find that group where you can say that, like, hey, I'm having a day, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna need a little more mental support because I'm feeling like I don't want to do this, or I can't do this, or and then getting that support to kind of, shift it a little. It's
Yeah,
huge. Hmm.
it is. I mean, it is huge. And I mean, that's one of the things that, because I mean, some people know, I mean, anyone that's listened to recent episodes, I was done.
Hmm.
I was done doing this podcast. I was done doing Spartans. I was done doing all of it.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, just because I'd hit that dark space
Yeah.
and just kind of lost my drive. I didn't want to do it
Mhm.
anymore. I didn't see the point,
Yep.
and then I went out with More Heart Than Scars and, did a couple races with them and reminded me
Yeah.
of that point of why I
Hmm.
wanted to do it. The only race I was going to do was a few that, like fly back to Seattle for Sisu and Ragnar because
Yep.
I love my team that I race with. We
Right.
have so
Right.
much fun on Ragnar. Um, but that was really it. I just kind of lost all drive,
Right.
you
Hmm.
know, everything else because it just wasn't there. But then
Right.
I did it with More Heart Than Scars, and I'm like, now I remember why I do this.
Hmm. Right.
Because, doing those races, doing World's Toughest with Marla, hitting 30
Mhm.
miles. I mean,
Yep.
that was amazing.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's the same thing, I say, like, I race with Northeast Oscar Mike. So when I'm up in
Hmm.
New England area, right? And then when I go down south, I race with More Heart Than Scars. And it's just brought a very different layer for me, like for racing too, to be able to feel that connectedness and just see the shifts and changes in all of us as a community, the community
Yeah.
inside the community, right? We're in the Spartan community, but then we have, like, these small groups of just these super connected, racing with a very different purpose, right? Than other people may be coming in. There's nothing wrong with any of the reasons any of us race, right? But
No.
having that mission and that purpose of being together and trying to promote an understanding about, mental illness, first responders, military, adaptive athletes is just, it's so important.
It is. It is very important. Um, just to give them that chance. I
Yeah.
mean, I know, and I mean, I'm technically physically able,
Mm-hmm.
but just to see some of the things, and I mean, knowing when I was injured, what it felt like to suddenly be like, you can't do this anymore.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
You're done.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It
And
tore me
being told
apart.
that hopeless, like that
Yeah.
hopelessness just being thrown in your
Hmm.
lap. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I couldn't imagine some of the mental hurdles
Right.
that, adaptive athletes and some other people have to go through,
Mm-hmm.
to be, I mean, that's one of my biggest fears. I mean, I'll be honest, is growing older and not being able to do all of this,
Mm-hmm.
and to see people who can't, but knowing that I can be like, okay, well, I'm still physically able. I can help.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I can
Yep.
help them still get,
Mm-hmm.
that feeling that I'm still able to, and
Right.
that means more to me than anything.
Right. Absolutely. 100%.
And I mean, it's so amazing to see Marla's face when she finally got
Mm-hmm.
got that buckle, you
Yep.
know, because
Mm-hmm.
all I kept thinking of was, Dallas
Yep.
in her face when we did it,
Right.
you
Right.
know. I mean, it helped that we did World's Toughest after that, and that went well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We got the 30 miles and to see her face there, but I still had in my mind that look on her face when we did not walk out of Dallas with that buckle
Right.
and how much that hurt me, her, and the team.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
the course was not on our side.
Exactly. And I think too, it's, racing with teams that like, there's this different piece of wanting, I know for me, like I get on myself when I'm doing something for myself, but when I'm doing something for a group, it kind of shifts me and
Hmm.
empowers me to want to work even harder that next time, like for the collective, right? For
Yep.
the team. And that's part of the reason I wanted to do the death race, is to see what I could do to battle a lot of this. Like we're talking about this darkness, these thoughts, right? We all have parts of ourselves that are not very nice to us, right? Like the voice in our head that like beats
Hmm.
us up day in and day out. And that's really like for my own mental health, I need to leave that, and the mountains of Pittsfield, right? And
Yep.
that's why I'm doing this race for myself. But as a whole, I like racing with the team, like
Yeah.
in general. But we always need to kind of figure out what do we need for our own reboot or reset in a mental, physical way, and kind of how we're gonna try to achieve that. And whether it's, I know like you've done like Ironmans, right? That's different. That's not a team event
No.
doing Ironman. So it's like we all have these different things that we need to do for ourselves, for our own mental, physical well-being, for our own emotional and kind of soul searching piece. And then we have these other things that we do within the collective and the group for a very different mission. But if we're not our whole self, we're not going to be able to be the
Yeah.
best for the team,
And that is the weird, balance of keeping
Mhm.
that, we've got to be ourselves, to be a team. It's one thing, I mean, a lot of people know, and I mean, I've always had a problem with like trying to fit in.
Yeah.
And I've always had this feeling like I never really did. And I think a lot of that comes up from like being, you know, the youngest of six. Like my
Mhm.
older brothers and sisters are way older than me.
Yeah.
I was closer in age to my nieces and nephews than my own brothers and sisters, but I was in that middle where I didn't really fit either group,
Yeah. Yeah.
growing up. Um, so I always felt out of place.
Hmm.
And as I grew up, it was still the same. I always kind of had that, like I always feel like I'm an outsider. And
Hmm.
it's always been really tough for me to get past that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I do like Iron Man stuff like that, where I can get that mental by
Hmm.
myself, doing like I always have, independent, just do it alone, you
Yep.
know. But then at the same time, I want to, I love More Heart Than Scars. I love that kind of stuff because then I do feel like I belong.
Hmm. Yep.
Because it's something where I don't feel like I'm on the outside constantly looking in. And that's kind of, been the hardest part, I think, most of my life. Like I said, is I've always had that,
Hmm.
and perception always is reality. It's
Right.
like, I've had my brothers and sisters have always said it was always unfair that it seemed like I could have burned down the house and mom and dad wouldn't have done anything. And I'm like, see, you guys see it as I can get away with anything. I saw it as mom and dad didn't care.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's just that perception of the
Right.
looking at the same thing and seeing two different. And I think
Mhm.
that's where a lot of the mental people have problems noticing people have those mental illnesses because they're like,
Right.
I went to the same thing you did,
Hmm.
but did you see it the same way? You know,
Right.
it's like how many
Right.
times have you like looked at like two different cameras taking the picture of the same thing from two
Hmm.
different angles and it looks completely different.
Totally different. Yeah. And perspective is something that is so important, because if it's true for us, then it's true for
Mhm.
mental state, our emotional state, our physical state, right? How we relate to others. And that's all the stuff that causes us to put on bigger masks and more masks and
Yeah.
not take them off, right? Because our perception is, someone's going to judge me for this, or someone's not going to accept me for this. So I have to have a bigger mask on and do these things. And we lose sight of who we are at the core, which then affects the physical and the mental.
Yep.
'Cause we're trying to
And
be
then it all
something
comes
that,
back.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, it's one of those things, a lot of people, it's one of the most cliche sayings, perception is reality, but it's true.
Yep. Absolutely.
You know, like I said, my perception of something is my reality. Your perception is your reality. And
Right.
sometimes I get people all the time to get mad at me for saying that, but I'm like, but it's the truth. We
Right.
can both look at the exact same thing, and I'm going to perceive it one way, you're going to perceive it another. Who's correct? Probably
Mm-hmm.
neither one of us, but
Right.
in our
Yep.
minds, you
Mm-hmm.
know, my
Yep.
perception is my reality.
Yep. And that's like, I often say, right, like there's your version, there's my version, and then there's the actual kind of
Yeah.
earth reality, right? The way that it is. But right. So there's these different competing factors that go into it. And we could sit here, right, and say, well, that's an
Mhm.
apple, that's an orange, and argue, or we could say, okay, you know what? It is different because of my experiences, my, the way I've lived, the traumas I've been through, the, sacrifices I've made, the
Mhm.
wins I've had, right, are going to cause me to perceive things differently. So yeah, we could go
Yeah.
through the same thing and we're going to have a totally different reaction. And
Yeah.
that's true. It's very true.
It's very, because your life experiences and everything else are going to tint your lens to
Absolutely.
it differently than it's going to tint mine. So
Right.
by the time we're looking at it through two different, completely different lenses, because they've been tinted through different, life experiences. And I think
Mhm.
that's a lot of things that people miss too when they're looking at a lot of these athletes. And I think that's the
Right.
hard part, where you see some of them that aren't obviously have
Hmm.
issues, you know,
Yeah.
and it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, but what have they been through? What perception are they seeing it from? You
Right.
know, that
Mhm.
it's really tough to gauge that,
Right.
you know.
Absolutely. And even when there is, like, when we were at Indian Mud Run 2 years ago now, I think the last one, the last Indian Mud Run, I think it was, with More Heart Than Scars, the parking guy was giving me a hard time bringing our athlete up to accessible parking, and made a comment about why we would need accessible parking, and was not very nice about it. And and our athlete was sitting in the seat next to me, and she looked, just normal, chilling out. I had the wheelchair and the walker and everything in the back of my Jeep, and I proceeded to run over the cones, went right up, told, Hubie and Joey, and they all took care of it. But it's this assumption of, well,
Hmm.
why are you here? If you're,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? If you need a wheelchair, why are you here? If you are an adaptive athlete, well, you don't look like it. Well, what does anything look like? That's it,
Yeah.
right? It's a judgment, it's a perception. And it's really amazing that still there's some people in this world that are so concrete and judgmental like that, when we're all in it together, trying
Yeah.
to do the best we can and work together for a common purpose.
Oh yeah, you see it all the time where, like, I mean, I try and stay off the social medias, but I'm on them occasionally, and every
Mhm.
once in a while you see it on like the TikTok or Instagram or whatever, the reels, someone like getting on someone because they're parked in a handicap spot, and it's like,
Right.
how do you know?
Right.
Just because someone gets out of the car and can walk
Hmm.
doesn't mean they aren't handicapped. They may have an
Right.
autoimmune disease that
Hmm.
causes, I've had a friend that looked healthy,
Hmm. Right.
like basically like six pack, everything.
Yep.
But they had an autoimmune disease that made it so that like they couldn't walk more than like, 100 feet without having to sit down.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
That came up later in life,
Hmm.
but they were able to still keep kind of their physique because of their diet. But at the same time, it was like,
They didn't
you
have that
you
endurance piece.
yeah, they
Yeah.
didn't have, so they needed to have, disabled parking so they could park closer and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And people look at them
Yep.
like, oh, what do you need it for? Where did you steal that? And it's like,
Right.
you don't know what's going on underneath,
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
know. And then
Mhm.
that person has a whole thing of, now you've got, once again, we come back to the mental part, because now
Mhm.
they feel guilty
Right.
because
Mhm.
someone's saying you don't look like you need it,
Right. Yep. And
you
then
know.
that voice starts
Mhm.
going, and then it just affects everything else. Yeah.
Then you get that voice in your head. I mean, yeah, I hate the
Yeah.
voice in my head. He's mean, but
Yeah, yeah, awful. Like what I say to myself, I would never say to anyone,
yeah.
anyone
Oh yeah.
else. Yep.
And I don't know where our society, I mean, and I'll be honest, it's one of those things I've been surprised since I've moved down to Houston.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot less of that.
Yeah, which is
People
awesome.
down, yeah,
Mhm.
people down here seem to be a lot more like mind their business, you know.
Mhm.
Of course, you get the occasional, but most of them are just more mind your business and take care of each other, you
Yep.
know, which
Yep.
was kind of the opposite of what like pretty much the media makes it seem like down here. But
Yeah.
who knows?
Yep.
I may
Wow.
just have met the right people and been in the right places. So
Right. Yeah. You're just connecting with the right people right off the bat
yeah.
while you're down there. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I think that, like with OCR, I think the community in general, you see so much of that. People
Yeah.
just dropping down like, hey, you need a knee, like jump on me and climb over the wall. Right. And, kind of there's just this air of kind of we're all together. We're starting, I love all the announcers like, right, like Bear
Oh
and
yeah.
Justin and everybody when they just right away start with that community just by all saying, Aru at the beginning of the race, right?
Hmm.
Why are we here? Who are the newbies, right? Who's been tried and true? We're in it together. And just that connection, that camaraderie helps to shift that mindset in the physical. You don't feel like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I can't get over that wall. I'm a failure. You feel right away like I can ask for help and that's okay. Right.
Hmm.
Like that, this is, I'm doing what I can do and I'm striving to do something that tons of people are sitting on the couch and not doing,
Yeah.
back to like, the new thing with the getting off the couch and what, Joe's been saying for ages, with 1 million people off
Yep.
the couch. So many people are just sinking into depression and stagnation and disconnect, isolation, like your whole world is on your phone and the couch is literally swallowing and killing people.
And it's one of those things like I've told people for years, whenever you're in a race, they're like, oh, I'm doing so bad. I'm going to be, I'm going to finish so far behind everyone. I'm like, you beat everybody sitting on the couch.
Yeah. Yep.
You got out here and you're doing it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the big thing. And one of the things that, and I love the community. Like you said, I
Mm-hmm.
love the community. It was even, this last weekend it ended up being a duathlon. It was supposed to be a triathlon, but the water had bacteria in it. So
Ooh.
they didn't let us swim. They were just like, we're going to run, then bike, and
Yeah.
then run again. And it was
Yeah.
just even that community where everyone's cheering each other on and their
Mhm.
help, like, hey, it's just around the corner. Hey, you're doing a great job. You know,
Yeah.
and I mean, you see it in the running community and the kind of the triathlon community,
Mhm.
but nothing like you see it in the OCR community where
Right.
it's literally like you said, hey, do you need to get over this? Hey, do you
Mhm.
need some help?
Yeah.
Nobody, you know, nobody
Mhm.
questions it. It's like, okay, cool. You need help?
Yeah.
Let's do it. I've been on so many races where we just stopped and started helping somebody who
Yep.
was having problems, didn't really ask, but we were just like, hey, do you need a hand?
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you can do this. Let's help
I
you.
can't remember how many times I've just done kind of a seated squat and been like,
Hmm.
okay, leg, shoulder, leg, shoulder, leg,
Yep.
shoulder.
Leg, shoulder,
I
go
got to
for
get
it.
over this wall now. Like
Yep.
but it's just, and I think that's the piece, right? When we can conquer these obstacles together, right? We're conquering the physical stuff by getting support, and then the mental stuff by like, man, I just climbed that wall. Like
Yeah.
my first Spartan, I was over 200 pounds. It took me 3.5 hours to do a sprint. I think I was able to do like 3 of the obstacles and only about a half a dozen burpees because I was dying, but I did it.
Hmm.
Right? Like I made it through that and it took me forever, but I did it. I finished. And then the next time, right? And then I lost weight and I was working out and got like more and more into it and more sure of myself, but people helped me. Nobody looked at me like, what is this woman doing on this course? Like, she's 40 years
Yep.
old. She's clearly just decided her first workout was going to be a Spartan after not working out for like 15 years or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Nobody said that.
Yeah.
People would go by me and say like, good job, you're killing it. I'm like, I'm so not killing it. I'm doing like a 50-minute mile, but I was killing it. Like, cause I was out there, not on the couch, right? Doing
Yep.
something different. And that changed my mindset a ton, not just for myself, but for the work that I did, when I was actually working as a clinician, now doing the body work, like I've experienced those shifts for myself, which makes it so much more powerful for me to be able to like support other people or be part of the teams.
Yeah. Which I mean, and that becomes one of those things. Like I said, for me, it stopped being about me and
Mhm.
just started being about helping others. And
Yeah.
that's where I found that I enjoyed it the most.
Mhm.
Like it has nothing to do with like, when I'm helping Marla and stuff like that, people are like, oh, how did you? I'm like, Marla got through.
Yeah. Yep. Mhm.
That's the end of it. It's like when we did World's Toughest, it
Mhm.
was all about getting Marla her 25 miles so she could get her adapted bib. That
Yep.
was pretty much the whole purpose of being out there.
Right.
And I mean, we ended up getting 30, and then, I mean, amazing. They even gave us adapted bibs for
Mhm.
getting to 25 miles. But I
Yeah.
mean, I never thought about that. Like, I just want to get Marla hers.
Right. Right. Because that's the goal.
Hmm.
That's the mission for that race. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's amazing stuff.
it is. It is really, and that's the whole point of it now for me. I just want to go out and help people.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. All
Awesome.
right. Well, we should probably wrap this up soon. We're getting close to the hour where I think we actually passed the hour, and Boggs gets all cranky with me when I go past that. Analytics or
Sorry,
something about an
Boggs.
hour.
I like to talk. He knows that. So
Oh, that's fine. This was great. I mean, this is something I would love to talk to you again
yeah,
about this. I mean,
absolutely.
there seems like a lot more that we could really get into with
Mhm.
the mental and the physical and how much they come together, you
Yep,
know.
absolutely.
So
Be
yeah,
awesome. I'd love that.
we'll definitely have to have you again.
Great.
We'll talk to Boggs and we'll
Thank
get it
you.
all set up.
Okay,
All right.
awesome. Sounds
All right.
great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have
Talk
a
to you
good night.
soon. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the BeastNet podcast. If you haven't done it yet, find us on Facebook, like and share the podcast. Give us a review on iTunes or Spotify. All these things will help to expand the show in the future. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear.